Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. It's a Friday afternoon before Week 9 in college football. We're going to talk with Chris Andrews from AgainstTheNumber.com to get some of his thoughts on interesting line movements or possible late betting value with some of these late college football lines. Chris Andrews, thanks so much for being back with us. What do you have for us? First game you want to identify from college football Week 9?
First game I want to go to is Mississippi over Auburn. I'm on the chalk in this one. I think Mississippi right now, they found their game again. I thought they were very dominant last week against Texas A&M. They had a little bit of a trough. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but after they beat Alabama, they kind of didn't show up for the next couple of weeks. I don't know if it was a hangover from such a big win. They also did have some injuries. But last week, they put it all back together again. They won 23-3, and really the score was not, or the game was not indicative of how close or of how much Mississippi won by. Let me get that all straight. Anyway, they won 23-3. It looked like it was much more dominant than that. Auburn has just had trouble finding itself all year. I think a lot was expected of them, both on offense and defense. Offensively, famously, they've had a lot of trouble settling in on a quarterback. Shaun White is the guy right now. He looks like he's going to be a good player eventually, but I don't think he's anywhere near there yet. On defense, Will Muschamp came in as the new defensive coordinator. I think they expected big improvement out of the defense. They have not gotten that. It's almost like a give up at this point in time for Auburn. I certainly don't want to say that quite yet, but I do think they have a lot going against them. A very good Mississippi team still in the hunt for an SEC championship. And if you win an SEC championship, you have a chance to win a national championship. Yeah. So I think right now Mississippi has things going their way. It's 7. I would still lay the 7, though I laid a little bit less earlier in the week.
Yeah, the line has crept up, and of course, Auburn has been wildly disappointing this year. It's always very tricky when you have one of those teams like Georgia Tech this year, one of those teams with high expectations to start the year, then they underperform, and just every week in the back of your mind, you're thinking maybe this is the week when they'll bounce back and play more to their preseason expectations. But for college football Week 9, Chris Andrews thinks the answer is no for Auburn, like an Ole Miss, currently -7. What's the second game you'd like to highlight for us, Chris?
I like Iowa State. Now, there's another one where the line has kind of dropped. I took 6.5 earlier in the week. I think you could still find 6 if you shop around. Iowa State fired their offensive coordinator, Mark Mangino. They also have a new quarterback that they put in, freshman Lanning, a kid that looks pretty good, and he's a real crowd favorite. Excellent runner. And I think if you look at Iowa State, they've actually played a little bit better the last couple of weeks. They didn't cover against TCU, but they actually had an early lead on them, and then the game just kind of fell apart, which TCU is known to do. There's a little too much offensive pressure. They came out last week, and they did cover. And I think that this is a team that right now is just, you hate to say hitting their peak because they're really not a very good team, but they are playing their best football of the season. Texas, conversely, they're coming off 2 straight wins, but needless to say, they've been very disappointing too. Do we suddenly think that they have it all together? I personally don't. Now they're going on the road, and they're, well, like I said, they were a touchdown favorite, a little less than that now. But like I said, I think you can find +6, and I think +6 still provides value on Iowa State. I think they come in. Paul Rhodes probably coaching for his job down here in the final weeks of the season. I think the players really do have a lot of respect for Rhodes, like him an awful lot. I think they play a real strong game. I look for them to win the game outright. I think they got a great shot to do that, but I'm going to take the 6 and put it in my back pocket.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I did bet this one when it was 7 earlier in the week, and now it's 5.5 market wide. You did say that you can find 6s. The one place I'm seeing at SBRodds.com where you can get a 6 is at the Greek. Does that concern you a little bit? The Greek apparently appears to have a lean towards Texas at -5.5.
I really wouldn't let that bother me. Okay. You know, you never know what kind of money he has on the game.
Right.
So, you know, I don't want to read too much into that.
All right. Well, yeah, what can I say? I hope you're right. I took Iowa State at +7. What's the third game that you'd like to discuss with us this week, Chris?
Well, I'm going against a lot of the wise guys. I've heard a lot of guys like Notre Dame. I don't. I like Temple in this game. I know it's a huge game for them. They've been looking for this for a while. And I understand what people are saying about Notre Dame. They probably are a much classier team. that's fine. But I also think you look at Temple, they're not that big a surprise. I think they had 19 starters coming back from last year's team. Last year was 6-6, which was really a good year for Temple. They've recruited very well. They've coached very well. A couple things I like to look at. First of all, the yards per play defensively. Temple gives up 4.4 yards per play, one of the absolute best in the country. So I think Notre Dame's going to have trouble moving the ball on them. I also look at yards per point, and Temple right now takes 21 yards against them to produce a point. It's one of the absolute best in college football. Conversely, it takes only 10 yards of offense out of Temple to produce a point themselves. Again, one of the absolute best in college football. So what that tells you is it's a very well-coached team. They don't do things that beat themselves. They do little things like not get bad penalties, know when to run out of bounds, know when to stay in bounds, don't waste their timeouts, good special teams, etc. So I think this is a team that is not going to beat themselves. We're getting plus 11 in this game at home. Notre Dame's had a lot of injuries, and I know it hasn't shown up yet, but sometimes it does show up very suddenly, and I'm not sure it's going to happen exactly in this game. But at this point in the season, a lot of football is really a war of attrition, and I think Notre Dame is going to suffer from those injuries at some point. Listen, I'm not asking much out of Temple. They can lose by 10. I still get the dough. I'm taking Temple plus 11.
All right, let me tell you what I did with this game, Chris Andrews. And this is, I hate to have to admit embarrassing things, but I do because I know that makes compelling videos here. I thought for all the same reasons that you just listed that Temple might be a good bet here. I jumped on them on Sunday night at plus 9.5. And then, after I made the bet, I looked into the game a little bit more before the line had moved. And I said to myself, oh my God, I'm on the wrong side here. Then after I decided that the line did move, now we're seeing 10.5 or 11. And I guess the thing that makes me nervous is when you have a team like Temple that has, not a powerful, explosive offense that gets it done with defense, when they're playing, mid-range opponents on offense, they can really hold those teams down and their defense really matters. But I feel like when they step up in competition against a team like Notre Dame, that's when offense really starts to matter more, and that Temple just doesn't have the offense to keep up with Notre Dame, and that their defense isn't going to be nearly as effective against Notre Dame's offense as it has been against the lesser offenses that they played so far. And that's why I decided that I was on the wrong side, and then I saw the line move after I decided that. What's your take on all that, Chris?
Well, that's what makes horse racing, I would say, but I also think that Temple, I think the total in this game, last I looked, was like about 50.
50, yeah.
I'm not a big totals guy. It looks a little high to me. And I think Temple could probably put 20 on the board. And I think if they do get to 20, I think they'll cover this number. And I think there's a reasonable chance they'll do that.
All right. Well, right now the line is 10.5 or 11. Chris Andrews liking a play on Temple. I have 9.5, and I'm not liking it right now, but I guess I'm feeling a little bit less bad about it after hearing what Chris Andrews had to say. Chris Andrews, thanks so much. Talk to you again next week for College Football Week 10.
Thank you, Peter.